Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Allison. If you are watching a video for the first time, I am currently a school librarian working in Linz, Austria. I just moved here about a month ago, and I am not only doing this new job, but also trying to get a booktube channel up and running. So, although I live in Austria now, I am American. I'm from the US. I have lived and worked in New York City for the past 6 years. And in the US right now, it is Latinx or Hispanic Heritage Month, which goes from September 15th to October 15th. And so I thought it would be a great time to talk about some of my favorite young adult novels by Latinx authors. Some of them you may have heard of before. They're definitely from big name famous authors. Some of them I feel like have gone kind of under the radar and just deserve a chance from more people. So I'm going to share only a couple of books. Well, not a couple. I have 13. But if I were to talk about all of the great books that are out there by Latinx authors, many of which I haven't read yet, this video would be hours and hours, so I don't want to do that. But I am going to leave a link for a list that I made on my bookshop page that has even more books written by Latinx authors. So if for whatever reason the 13 awesome books I'm going to talk about today don't appeal to you, definitely check out that list to see if there are other ones that you would like to read. So let's get started. The first book I want to talk about is With the Fire on High by Elizabeth Acevedo. Now, Elizabeth Acevedo is one of those authors I mentioned who definitely does not fly under the radar. She's super famous, right? The Poet X is really well known, and honestly, I feel like Clap When You Land, which is her most recent novel, is really well known. I feel like With the Fire on High sort of goes under the radar a little and doesn't get talked about as much, but it's my favorite Elizabeth Acevedo novel. So I had to talk about it here for just a minute. So this book combines two of my favorite things, which are food and travel. And you may notice that theme running through this whole video. So the main character in this book is Amani. And Amani has lots of responsibilities and only so many hours in a day. She is a mother who has to take care of her toddler. She needs to help her abuela. And even though she's a really great cook, she knows that she definitely doesn't have time for her for the new culinary arts class that her school is offering. And she doesn't have time or money for the trip to Spain that is a part of that class. So I feel like Amani's journey through this book is sort of struggling to realize that she can take on the responsibilities that she already has and still find a way to fulfill her dreams. In the end, I feel like it's not a spoiler to say this, she does take the class and she does get to go to Spain, and it is a life-changing experience for her. And having that experience sort of shows her that you can sort of have it all, or maybe not at all, but like it's possible for people to balance being a mom and a supportive family member and still like getting to do the things that you are passionate about. So again, my favorite part of this book is the trip to Spain because I love getting to see characters travel to new places in books. But the book as a whole is really great. And if you are looking for a contemporary story to kick off your reading of Latinx authors, this would be a really good one. So the next one that I want to talk about is We Set the Dark on Fire by Taylor K. Mejia. And this, I like to describe it as a dystopian fantasy novel because I do think that there are elements of both within the story. So this is set in Medio. And in Medio, if you are a person of wealth and privilege, a man of wealth and privilege, then you have two wives. One of them runs your household and one of them takes care of your children. Well, gives birth to and raises your children. And the Medio School for Girls exists to prepare young women of good breeding and high class to become those wives. Danny is a girl who has attended the Medio School for Girls and is on the brink of becoming a wife in one of these wealthy men's households. Of course, this is only the case for the wealthy. Poor people, people of the lower class, do not have a situation like this. And Danny knows this firsthand because Danny is from the lower class and she's just sort of been posing as a wealthy girl in the Medio School for Girls. She's, again, on the brink of becoming a wife, living in one of these wealthy households, and just before that happens, she's offered this really big opportunity. It is maybe not exactly on the up and up, but it will have a huge impact on her family, a positive one, and that sort of sets her on this unexpected trajectory, one that involves probably more secrets and spying and defiance than she ever expected. Meanwhile, the second wife in her home is Carmen. And Carmen was one of Danny's first friends when she went to the Medio School for Girls, and then Danny let Carmen in on her secret, and that sort of backfired on her, and they've sort of been enemies ever since. And so Danny thinks that having to live in this household and be a wife with Carmen is a liability for her. But it turns out that, first of all, Carmen has secrets of her own. And second of all, as they are forced to live together and work together and learn more about each other, they definitely grow closer. I don't want to give too much away, but they grow closer. There is just a lot of stuff to love in this book. So there is a queer romance, which is great, but this book just has so many great elements outside of the really interesting story. You know, it's very feminist. It has to do with resistance and taking action to like take down corrupt institutions, and how class differences get to the volatile point that they often get to. So honestly, like, if any of that appeals to you, I would definitely recommend it. Okay, next up we have Cuban Girl's Guide to Tea and Tomorrow by Laura Taylor Namey. Sorry, I was just trying to think if I had actually said the authors of the first two books, but I did. So yes, A Cuban Girl's Guide to Tea and Tomorrow by Laura Taylor Namey is another one of the books I mentioned that features both travel and food. So the main character in this book is Lila, and she's kind of been having a bit of a rough time lately. And then something happens in her life during this rough period that really worries her family. And so they kind of make an executive decision to change her plans for her. Initially, she was going to take over as head baker in the family panaderia. But instead, her family decides that she needs kind of a summer of rest and relaxation. So they send her to Winchester, England, where they have family friends who own an inn. This, honestly, it sounds like a dream come true to me. Like, who wouldn't want to go spend a summer in the English countryside? But Lila does not want to. She is not thrilled about it at all, in fact. Winchester, England seems like the polar opposite of Miami, where she's from. Miami is vibrant and Winchester is gray. Miami is bustling and Winchester is tiny. There's no sun in sight, which is, you know, vital to her existence. Plus, there's this really grumpy cook to contend with at the inn that her family friends own. But then she meets Orion. Orion's family owns a tea shop in town, and Orion nominates himself to be Lila's personal guide to England and Winchester. And so they spend more time together, they explore the town, they have other adventures in different parts of England, and as things happen, you know, they get closer, things are going pretty well. Lila begins to think that maybe England isn't so bad after all. Maybe she even has a future there, but that would mean upending like every plan she's ever made for herself, and she's not sure if she's ready to do that. So if you enjoy reading about delicious baked goods and quaint English towns, then this is the book that I would recommend you pick up. Okay, so the next book I want to talk about is called The Resolutions by Mia Garcia. And this one came out a few years ago, and I really loved it, and I don't think I've ever heard anyone else talk about it. I think that it's such a great book, and it flew so under the radar when it was published that I just want to give it a big shout out. This book centers on a group of 4 friends, Jess, Lee, Ryan, and Nora, and they are basically inseparable. They are super close, they've done everything together, they have like endless text chains and so many traditions and all of this stuff. But they're getting older, they're getting closer to graduation, and things are changing for them. They seem to be growing farther apart and maybe even moving on from themselves as a friend group. So one of their traditions is that they all make New Year's resolutions together. So this year, one of the members of the friend group is like especially concerned about their group sort of fracturing and what that might mean. And so she wants to add in a new element to this tradition, and she wants them to make New Year's resolutions for each other. And so these are things that sort of are designed to help each other grow and sort of push each other out of their comfort zone and realize new things about themselves, and sort of be brave, but most of all, to sort of regain that closeness as a friend group. But we all know the saying about the best laid plans, and no one can really predict the uncertainties of life. And this plan that they made is tested over and over by new love and breakups and unexpected decisions. And it's just not clear whether this group of 4 friends, even though they've been together for so long and they're such a strong friend group, it's not clear if they're going to be able to withstand all of these obstacles and make it through to the other side. So I think it's a very realistic portrayal of kind of what it's like to be in that transitional period of life when you're on the cusp of college and you're not sure what's going to happen with your past friends, with your future friends. I really liked that aspect of it. I also really liked that it's narrated by all 4 characters. I love books with multiple narrators, so if you like that too, then you might want to pick up The Resolutions. Next up, I wanted to tell you about Gabby, A Girl in Pieces by Isabel Quintero. This is an older book. It was published in 2014. I feel like even when we talk about backlist books, we're often only talking about things like a year or 2 old. So I feel like this doesn't get the love it deserves, even though it's really only 7 years old. That's not that old. So the narrator of the book, the main character, is Gabby, and Gabby, A Girl in Pieces is a diary of her senior year of high school. And she is a Mexican-American girl, and she is a fat girl, which we love to see. And in many ways, this diary is just a portrayal of normal teenage life, right? She loves to eat hot Cheetos with hot sauce. She wants a boyfriend and is just sort of trying to figure out who the right boy for her is. She sometimes struggles with her body image, and she has close friends who she would do anything for. But her life isn't always easy, and she's got some real challenges that she's going through as well. Unfortunately, her dad struggles with addiction. One of her best friends ends up getting pregnant. The other best friend comes out to her, and there are repercussions in his life because of that. And of course, she wants to do whatever she can to help her friends, but as a teenager, you don't always have the resources that you need to do the best things for your friends. And she has her mother's sort of austere take on sex education. So all of that is sort of leading to a complex life for Gabby. We get to see all of this from Gabby's perspective, and it's really, it's great. It's realistic, it's complex, it's interesting. It's everything you would want from a realistic fiction book, I think. Next up is Don't Date Rosa Santos by Nina Moreno, which I'm pretty sure I have already gushed about in a previous video, and I will continue to do so here because It is honestly one of the best rom-coms I've ever read. I cannot express fully how much I adore this book. Nina is the main character, as you can probably guess from the title. She has always been told that she is cursed by the sea. When the women in her family fall in love with seafaring men, tragic events happen. So, you can imagine, living in a small town called Port Coral on the water, there aren't a lot of boys who are interested in this supposedly cursed girl. But that hasn't really mattered to Nina so far because she has been really focused on school. While she's in high school, she is working to complete her associate's degree at the same time so that she can sort of have a leg up in college, and she has her heart set on one particular college that has a study abroad program to Cuba. Because her family is Cuban, but her grandmother refuses to talk about Cuba, and she wants the opportunity to go and sort of connect with her culture and learn about her history herself. So that's what her focus is. And then one day she bumps into this boy named Alex, and she like literally bumps into him. And Alex's family owns the marina. Alex also happens to be a really great baker. And Alex has some challenges going on in his life as well. So he and Nina sort of start to develop this friendship that might lead to more. And all of this is set against the backdrop of them trying to sort of save their town as it is from this not so great event that is supposed to be happening. And Nina and Alex's story is great. It is a wonderful rom-com, but the side characters are also awesome too. One of her friends, their family owns a bodega in the town, and there's just so much personality within the store, within the characters. Nina's family is great. It's a really well-rounded book. It's one you will laugh at, and again, if you enjoy reading about delicious baked goods, there's a bonus that is included in this book as well. Next, I wanted to mention Salty Bittersweet by Mayra Cuevas. And I feel like, I'm sorry, I'm laughing because once again, this is a book that involves a main character who loves to cook and travels to Europe. So it's like a trilogy. With the Fire on High, Cuban Girl's Guide to Tea and Tomorrow, and Salty Bittersweet. Could read them all together. Anyway. Obviously, you can tell I have a type when it comes to books. So the main character in this book is Isabella, and Isabella is an aspiring chef. Her life is kind of falling apart right now. Her abuela just recently passed away. She's super sad about it, and on top of that, her parents have also just gotten divorced. So Isabella decides that she's going to go and live with her father and his new wife in France. And it's kind of awkward for her because the whole new wife situation, but she has an ulterior motive for being there, which is that her father's new home is very close to this really well-known restaurant that has a talented chef. And every year he does this super competitive apprenticeship program. And I believe that at the end of the apprenticeship program, you can get a job. So Isabella is willing to deal with the awkwardness in order to be a part of this apprenticeship program and realize her chef dreams. So this could be the thing that helps her get her life back on track, but things keep getting worse. She finds out her stepmother is pregnant. She misses her abuela so much. And she is not really doing well at the apprenticeship thing. She feels like she's at the bottom of her class. She's not sure how to turn that around. So she sort of has to figure all that stuff out and figure out her place in this family. And honestly, like, the story is great. I don't want to detract from that, but like the scenes of her cooking and all of the like French food and French atmosphere was reason enough for me to like it. But the story is solid too, I promise. Next, I wanted to talk about Cemetery Boys by Aiden Thomas. And again, this is one that is probably on most people's radars. It was a big deal when it came out, and it's worth the hype. Also, Since Latinx Heritage Month happens in the fall, this is really the perfect book with those like witchy fall vibes. And so that is because it is literally set in a cemetery. Yadriel, the main character, he is a brujo, or he wants to be a brujo, which is a healer and someone who helps sort of lost souls cross over to the other side. And this is something that the men in his family do. And Yadriel is also trans, and the obstacle that he is facing is that many members of his family don't believe he can be a brujo because they don't think of him as a man. So of course, he wants to prove to them that he can be a real brujo. And so he decides to prove this to them, and he accidentally summons a ghost. And he can't get rid of the ghost. The ghost happens to be a boy he went to school with named Julian. Julian is not thrilled about being dead, as you might imagine. And he has some loose ends he feels he needs to tie up, so he is refusing to cross over to the other side. So Yadriel agrees to sort of help Julian out, to help figure out how and why exactly he died and help him like get his affairs in order, so to speak, before crossing over. So it's going well until it isn't, because it turns out that Yadriel kind of likes Julian, and the more time he spends with him, the more time he wants to spend with him, and he doesn't want him to be a ghost who has to cross over to the other side. So he's like really conflicted about this. But then there's also the fact that something in the cemetery is really just not right. These sinister, strange things keep happening, and as Yadriel tries to figure out what's going on, he is actually in like a lot more danger than he realizes. So this book is really funny, and it has like really great dialogue and really great characters, but also has those spooky cemetery vibes. If you like the spooky, ghostly brujo factor, then it's a great fall read. Maybe even save it for Halloween, even though that's after Latinx Heritage Month is over. My next book is Fat Chance Charlie Vega by Crystal Maldonado. We love a rom-com with a fat girl hero. Charlie Vega is pretty awesome. She is smart, she is funny, she has goals she wants to accomplish. She also is a fat brown girl living in a super white suburban Connecticut town with a mother who is obsessed with weight loss. Not just her own weight loss, but Charlie's weight loss too. Luckily, she has an amazing supportive friend, Amelia, who is always around to lift Charlie up and just generally be a great friend. But the thing about Amelia is she's also thin and popular and just generally really awesome. So as much as Charlie loves her and their friendship, she can't help feeling a little bit insecure sometimes. And this especially comes into play when Charlie starts dating this guy, and it's going really well. She really likes him, and then she finds out that he asked Amelia out first. And Charlie can't help but wonder if like he ever really liked her, if she was just sort of second choice to Amelia. And this is just kind of sends her into a little bit of a spiral, and she has to figure things out for herself. It is a rom-com, so it does have a happy ending. So aside from being a really great rom-com that's cute and funny and has a happy ending, it's also, I feel like, a really good look at the realities of being a teen girl who just isn't what is considered normal. You know, the reality of the situation is Charlie is fat and she is Latinx, and those are two aspects of her identity that set her apart from most of the other people in her community. And in high school, we know everyone just wants to fit in and kind of get through it. So I really like that aspect of the book. But also, it's funny and heartfelt and just a really good addition to the rom-com compendium. Next is Labyrinth Loss by Zoraida Cordova. This is another witchy book that would be a great fall read, which is perfect since we are in fall right now. Alex, the main character, is a bruja, and she is actually a super powerful one, but she hates magic. So on her death day, which is supposed to be the day that she accepts her powers and gets blessings from her ancestors, she instead tries to cast a spell that will get rid of her magic forever. As you may imagine, this does not work. In fact, instead of getting rid of her magic, she accidentally gets rid of her whole family. They disappear, and it turns out that they're in this in-between world called Los Lagos. And so, of course, Alex wants her family back. She enlists the help of this boy named Nova, who is a brujo, who is the one who told her the spell that could get rid of her magic, as well as Rishi, her best friend, who has no magic at all. So they're all going to go on a journey to Los Lagos to rescue her family. But of course, it's not exactly easy to get to the in-between world, let alone like rescue people from there. So there are a lot of obstacles to get through, and each thing that happens is kind of more harrowing than the last. And there's also some betrayal and villainy that unexpectedly come up, as well as a bit of a love story. So I'm hoping that that intrigues you enough to make you pick it up, but obviously it's up to you. Next up is Infinity Sun by Adam Silvera. Again, Adam Silvera is another pretty well-known author at this point. We all know him and love or hate him for the soul-crushing science fiction and realistic fiction that he writes, but it turns out that he is more than capable of crushing our hearts in the fantasy genre as well. So if you haven't given Infinity Sun a try because magical creatures really aren't your thing, I promise that this is the same Adam Silvera writing that we know and love or hate, just with like phoenixes and hydras and stuff. So this is set in New York City, but in this version, magic exists. There are people known as Celestials who have innate magical abilities, and there are also people known as Specters who use the blood of magical creatures to give themselves powers. This is obviously not a good thing. And the main characters of the story are Brighton and Emil, and they are twins. They have a grandmother who did have magical powers, and Brighton is really hoping that on their 18th birthday, both of them will have powers manifest. But in the meantime, he is focused on growing his social media presence, especially his YouTube channel, Celestials of New York. Emil wants nothing to do with magic. He loves magical creatures, he works at the Phoenix Museum, and he wants nothing more than to just keep learning about them and keep helping the Phoenixes as much as he can. Their 18th birthday comes and goes, no powers. Then they're coming home from some sort of event and they end up getting into a conflict with a specter. And at this time, in the heat of the moment, Emil discovers that he does in fact have powers, and they're kind of rare and impressive powers. Like, he may actually be a chosen one of sorts. This sets off a kind of chain of events that pits the Spellwalkers, who are the Celestials who try to protect the city, against the Bloodcasters, who are a gang of specters led by this woman named Luna, who is this evil woman bent on immortality. I mean, they've been in conflict before, but what happens with Emil sort of accelerates that. And I really don't want to say too much more because I do think that it might be a little spoilery. I don't want to give anything away. But I will tell you that it is action-packed. Emil and Brighton are sort of the main characters, but there are chapters from the perspectives of other characters as well, and I think that that makes it an even more well-rounded story. There are plenty of magical creatures if that's your thing, and we have some vintage Adam Silvera heartbreak, so prepare yourself. Next is The Girl at Midnight by Melissa Gray. This is another one that's kind of older, but is still a really great book. It is also another urban fantasy novel set in New York City. Maybe I shouldn't have put these two right next to each other, but it is what it is. So the main character in this book, her name is Echo. She is a pickpocket and a runaway, and she sort of gets by in life by stealing things and selling them on the black market. She is also the only human who knows about this ancient race of magical people who live underneath the city of New York. And they have sort of been engaged in this conflict for centuries, and at this point, it's finally like come to New York City. Echo wants to protect not just her home, but the only family she's ever known. And so she is off in search of the Firebird, which is supposed to have such great powers that it's the only thing that could end this conflict for good. Of course, it's also supposed to be a myth, so will she be able to find it? It's going to be a super dangerous quest, of course, but she feels like her life of thieving has prepared her for exactly such an event. So I feel like this story really has very strong Daughter of Smoke and Bone vibes. So if that is a fantasy novel you enjoy, then I think you'll also like The Girl at Midnight. And the last book that I want to talk about is This Is How We Fly by Anna Mariano. Because how could I not include a book about Quidditch in my list of books by Latinx authors? This does contain one of my personal least favorite things in YA books, which is really bad YA parents. And we can have that rant another day. It's definitely still a worthy read. We may not want to support a certain turfy author anymore, but we can still enjoy wizard sports. So Ellen is the main character in this book, and she wants to spend her last summer before college just hanging out with her best friends before they all go their separate ways. Unfortunately, her plans are kind of thwarted because her wicked stepmother grounds her for the summer. Luckily, one of her best friends is kind of a parent whisperer, and she's able to convince Ellen's parents that Ellen should be allowed to join the Quidditch team. And Ellen is kind of skeptical about this, but she wants to be able to spend time with Melissa, so she does it. And as she slowly gets to know her teammates and gets more comfortable with the game, she really finds a home on this Quidditch team, which is even more important because everything else in her life is going a little haywire. She feels like she and her friends are all kind of separating themselves. Maybe it's just a thing that happens pre-college, or maybe there's something else going on. And then there's also her not so great home life as well. I feel like the draw of this book for a lot of people will be the Quidditch, because that's kind of a thing that you don't really see in a lot of YA books. But the portrayal of these really complex and rich relationships between friends and families, I think, is something that will keep people engaged beyond the Quidditch. Especially when you're thinking about friends going through a transitional period, which is something so common when you're a teenager, and the realities and politics kind of being in a blended family. All of that is done really well. So that was the last book I wanted to share. I really hope that you enjoyed this and perhaps found something new that you might want to read during this Latinx Heritage Month. I am also hoping that this will be one of my last videos from this not great spot, because I am moving into my new apartment this week, which is super exciting. I'm hoping sometime this week I will be able to film a sort of empty apartment tour. It's not really empty because I'm renting a furnished place, but empty of my stuff at least. and then I can do another one once all of like my books and decorations and stuff are there. So that's what's on my agenda for the week. Leave a comment below if you want to add any recommendations of books by Latinx authors, whether they are YA or otherwise. And again, if you've read this whole list or none of them appeal to you, do check out the bookshop list that has way more titles. Okay, I will see you guys next time.